All right, we'll kick off for our lunchtime presentation. So EMSINA is a national geospatial group, particularly for emergency management. And as well as agencies, we also collaborate with industry as well to some extent. So I'd like to welcome Ryan from the Geospatial Intelligence Centre to present on post and pre-disaster imagery.
Yeah.
You, Ryan.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. So just want to kind of introduce what we're doing and share some examples really quickly. My name is Ryan Bank. I'm the Managing Director of the GIC, or Geospatial Intelligence Centre. We are an insurance industry nonprofit geospatial consortium. So we're funded by insurers. We launched about 2 years ago in the US and are very rapidly expanding. We're just launching here in Australia and New Zealand, and we're really excited about that. So we've got some stuff to kind of show and give you some examples of what we're doing with it. At our core, we looked at how insurers were using and leveraging geospatial. It's a multi-trillion-dollar industry. They basically are just scratching the surface of what we can do geospatially, but they sit behind every disaster response or recovery. They are what make a lot of the population whole again. And they weren't really using geospatial data all that much. What we're creating, we partnered with a company called Vexel. They were the team behind Microsoft. They built Bing Maps and used all of that intellectual property that they used at Microsoft. They spun out and took private and then joined up with us at the GIC. So we have a couple of programs. One is our Blue Sky Imagery program, and we have a Gray Sky Imagery program. The Blue Sky Imagery program, we're flying 90% of the population of Australia and New Zealand every single year at 7.5 centimeter resolution imagery. It's top-down imagery, plus it's also, sorry Elliot, I used your house, I don't know if that was okay as an example, but anyway.
That's the holiday house, it's okay.
I don't even have the guest house, much less the main house. So anyway, 7.5 centimeter nadir top down plus 360 degree oblique imagery. This is just a massive scale program. And then we're expanding that to include 20 centimeter wide area coverage. So we'll fly an additional 600,000 square kilometers of high resolution imagery this summer to cover the sort of the rest of the population. We create a number of imagery products from that. So we have that top-down imagery, we have the 360-degree oblique imagery, and then we have digital elevation models. Those digital elevation models are at the same resolution. So we're at about a 7.5 centimeter elevation model for everywhere that we fly. So really high resolution stuff. To put that in perspective, let's just do a quick comparison. So in the US, the highest resolution satellite imagery legally available is 46 centimeters. So that's what we have on the right. Compare that to our 7.5 centimeter, except this actually is zoomed out so you can see it's the same little cul-de-sac. That's actually the difference. So you're seeing just much higher resolution imagery compared to what's available with satellite, and it's all, again, in 360 degrees. So, like I mentioned, we are currently flying the population dense areas. We're starting in the north, we're working our way south. As days get longer, we need sunlight, we need longer flight days. But we're currently flying in Brisbane right now. So we've already collected some of the towns up north in Queensland. We're working our way south, and we'll finish up here later this spring. Now, we do that every year. So in the U.S., we're flying every square inch of the U.S. We're flying most of the population as well, so kind of the programs mirror each other. We also then have a gray sky program. So with gray sky, that's our disaster response program. We fly every major gray sky event that comes up, and we make all of this available to emergency services, to government, to law enforcement for free. There's no cost to it. And that's courtesy of the insurance industry. So just as a couple of examples, Hurricane Florence in the U.S., we collected 65,000 square kilometers of high-resolution imagery. Hurricane Michael, we did 85,000 square kilometers. That's larger than Ireland and Northern Ireland combined. We flew it in about 2 flight days. We processed it in a rolling 24-hour period. So it was delivered out to emergency services, to insurers, within 24 hours of wheels down on collection. This is the largest scale program that we know of like this. It's all survey accurate. It's all very, very rapid. We make that available again at no cost. The California wildfires, 60% of all damage assessment was done off of our imagery for the last California wildfire. So what this opens up is remote assessment. This opens up the ability to go and assess things remotely and do that desk assessment. Now, as I mentioned, in the U.S., we also make it all available. We've standardized across the U.S. federal and state government. So FEMA, NOAA, DHS, alphabet soup of agencies. We are replicating that program here. We're working directly with EMSINA and Emergency Management Agency to try and figure out how do we standardize that process. So we're just rolling it out this year. We're going to trial it and test it a little bit later. Now, one thing I did want to show that's new, one of the tests that we're currently doing, we're calling it the Hail Cam. It's actually called Oh Hell Yeah. We left it to a bunch of engineers to name, and well, don't let them ever do that again. Oh Hell Yeah has a 1.5 centimeter resolution image, survey accurate at aircraft scale. So we use all fixed wing aircraft. We standardize on the Vexel sensors. These sensors are about $1.5 million a piece. We have about 150 of them in the program in the US, 450 flying for us globally that we can call in to fly gray sky or fly disaster response. But it gives some remarkable imagery. So we flew some test flights. We did a hailstorm. You can see on the left here, individual hail-dented roof tiles, car that got dinged up, mothers that got dinged up. So this is sort of the new type of resolution imagery that we're doing, the new sort of scale of this all. We're still able to cover about 500 square kilometers per camera per flight day, but at a scale or at a resolution of 1.5 centimeters. So just truly remarkable stuff. Some of the analytics that we do. So we basically are the arms dealers of the industry. We're trying to enable everybody else to do work. We're not the ones who are we're not an AI vendor. We're not trying to sell anything. We worked in partnership with Munich Re on this, the world's largest reinsurer, and we're able to do AI-based damage classification and assessment. So on a scale of 0 to 5, we can tell exactly what occurred and how much damage occurred at every single building in the areas that we cover. We can run this damage classification at a rate of about just under 200,000 buildings per minute. So that's kind of the speed that we can do this damage assessment and classification. And it's upper 90% accuracy. So because of the partnership with Munich Re, we get the insurance claims on the back end. So as those claims are filed, we then validate that damage. And we were able to do this very successfully in Hurricane Michael. But it really does sort of change the scenario to where you can just go to remote autonomous desk classification or desk assessments. Very, very simple. Now, we have a partner network. A few of the partners that we have listed, we enable them to do new, innovative stuff. We want people to work with us. One of our big partners is, well, a couple of them that I want to highlight. One is Arturo. Arturo is able to pull feature extraction. They're able to actually pull the features out of the imagery because the imagery is machine readable. Everything that we fly is homogeneous. So you're not getting patchwork of data sets, patchwork imagery or vintage. All of our imagery is nice and smooth, so it's machine readable. You're able to get all of these different feature classes automatically in a couple of seconds just by running it through their algo. So some really, really cool stuff that they're doing. We're able to do damage prediction. So this is a company called BetterView. It runs all of the hazards around the property to determine what the likelihood of damage is to that individual property or house, but then it does it in aggregate for an entire city, so that you can see a neighborhood, a city, some polygon of area, what the overall probability of damage is. We're working with a company called Slingshot. This came out of the US military. They were working on satellite imagery and then wanted to work on higher resolution stuff. Because all of our imagery is multispectral, it also has near infrared, we're able to do very quickly that defensible space for wildfire or bushfire. So we can see the vegetation, we have a vegetation layer, we have a building layer, we can run that analysis very, very quickly. One thing I want to show on what we are currently doing, so we have built a platform out. This is a test platform that we built internally. So again, at an address level, we're able to determine sort of all the feature classes or characteristics of that house. But to make that a little bit easier, we're working with one of our main partners is Esri. And we just are releasing a beta version of something that we co-developed. They've been building out in Redlands, California, called Virtual Inspection Studio. What Virtual Inspection Studio does is you can search by address, or you can upload a spreadsheet, CSV file, Excel file, something of locations, and then you quickly do that classification. So if we just hit import, this runs browser-based, it runs in the cloud, you can also run it on-prem. It pulls up all those locations, and then if you click on any one, it returns this view. So it's going to show you the before image, it's going to show you the after, it's going to show you north, south, east, west from an oblique view. All of this is natively interactive. So if you click on any of these images, you can get in, navigate, pan, zoom, move it around, whatever you need to do. It's got Esri's measurement tools in it. Our imagery is both 3D, but also survey accurate. So we have the geometry of every single pixel for everywhere that we fly. So you can quickly do calculation off of that. It's got a swipe tool, so you can swipe before and after and see the change, see what the pre to post imagery looks like. So we're very excited by this. We've some pretty Melbourne pictures here. We did a test flight in Melbourne just to start, and then we moved those cameras up to then take a kind of better use of the longer daylight that we have up north. But we're working our way south, and then we're looking right now for a couple of things. One, we're working with EMSINA and EMA to figure out the emergency management process to get that gray sky post-disaster imagery into the hands of all sort of official government users. We want that to be very efficient. The other thing that we're working on is this year we have 600,000 square kilometers of additional capacity for high resolution imagery to bring online, and we're trying to figure out where we want to fly that. So again, Kane is doing some great analysis on sort of what hazards are typically expected, across the range, where population density is, some of that. We're working with GA to figure out sort of where the best place to deploy that is. And that will grow over time. So next year as we fly again, next season, it will be then more and more and more. We'll continue to grow that as we have additional aircraft and cameras online. So I'll pause there before handing over to our partners at Esri Australia. Any questions? Anything you guys want to chat about? No?
What height are you taking all the photos?
Sure. So it depends on which sensor we use. We use a couple of different ones. Don't quote me on this, but I think it's about 6,000 to 7,000 feet AGL for the 7.5 centimeter. That's typically low and slow in like a Cessna 206. And then the wide area one, that is an absolute beast of a camera. It can collect, it's an 8.5 kilometer flight strip. And it flies in a pressurized aircraft. So typically about 16,000 feet. And it can fly in a Learjet. So as fast as you can fly it, it's taking an 8.5 kilometer flight strip of imagery every second and a half. So very, very high frame rate, very wide area. This is what Bing used to do country scale collection for Microsoft. Then that collect became DG's Clear 30 product. So yeah, kind of fun stuff. Cool.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, guys.
Quick thanks, Ryan. And now we're in front of Andrew from Esri Australia.
Thank you. All right. Now, I'm not sure how long I'm going to talk to what I've got to talk to today, but I've got a couple of topics. The first one is kind of leading on from where Ryan left off around imagery analysis and bringing imagery data a little closer to you guys. So some new, obviously we're here from Esri Australia and Esri, there's a bunch of new imagery-based analysis tools in machine learning and these sort of things, these buzzwords that you're hearing about. Deep learning is probably the next level, I guess, on that, and using neural networks to analyse your data, and particularly imagery data. But in this case, those that aren't familiar or are unaware of deep learning, Esri has some tools inside of the desktop packages now that allow you to access deep learning neural networks. In essence, there's a bunch of steps here that you take to do that analysis. So taking it from the data that GIC are collecting or other imagery data sets, you'll need to do some object detection. In this case, we're going to talk about damaged buildings shortly, but damaged versus undamaged buildings might be a way to analyse that. So you need to train some data, you need to put that into your model, and then the model will tell you whether you've got it right or not by you looking at how well it's done. You can start to use Python notebooks to access those models and to be able to do the training. And with a bit of luck, you end up with a lot of data being analysed for not a whole lot of time, because the alternative is often visual analysis with yourself, so it's people power. So I guess that's probably similar to what we just talked about. But what I wanted to, I mean, you had a screen up, which was the Wolseley fire. There is definitely an example of how this data was analysed from the GIC, and it was provided to the organisations through insurance, but also to the response teams and the recovery effort. And what you're seeing on the screen here is this is essentially a demo that was done at the Esri UC this year. But it's a demo of something that actually did happen, where the organisations in play here did their analysis. They used the deep learning algorithms, PyTorch, I think it was. They were able to look at this fire perimeter. Let's just get this rolling as well. The fire perimeter had about 9,000 odd buildings inside of it. They trained the model. It went through and was able to classify buildings thereabouts 99% certainty rate, or 99 and a bit more actually. And they pulled out about 400 odd damaged buildings from that in the space of a few minutes. So rather than sort of do your visual analysis, which obviously you need to do the training samples, they were able to run through that model and pull out that information very, very quickly, which obviously makes it a lot easier and a lot faster to go and do recovery efforts. And you can start to use your GIS skills in other areas, potentially. I don't have a whole lot more on deep learning other than, say, we're talking about GIC now. So I'm going to switch out and talk about something slightly different, completely different in fact, from imagery analysis and deep learning, but still along the same track as using analytical tools. So some of you have probably seen Insights for ArcGIS. It's an application that is a browser-based application. It runs either in software as a service or the cloud, or it can run on your own enterprise. It takes data out of your databases if you choose, or it can use feature services that are hosted on your own systems. So what I've got here is something I just put together. So what I'm going to do is a little bit of basic analysis just to show you the whys and wherefores with insights. And mainly, you know, if you're going to try and use this, you'd be looking at it from a planning or an exploratory analysis point of view. So you're not necessarily going to use this on the front line to do operational exercises in real time. You're going to take this and start to look at how you went, or look at doing some planning. So you can start to actually do the analysis on the fly. And what I like about it is that you can create scenarios. So you might have a scenario that we might look at in a second. The scenario could then be replicated on a number of different occasions by pulling in and creating a model. So right now we've got, we're looking at police stations, we've got hospitals, local government areas, and a cyclone track. So I've already started this analysis, so I'm going to take steps back now and pull it back to how it started. That'll do. Something like that. So this is pretty basic sort of stuff. So what I want to try and do is I want to know what police stations and hospitals are in line of Marcia. Okay, so I want to know which ones were part of the... And I can do that fairly quickly by taking my police stations here and filtering by the selected features. Okay, so I'm just going to run that analysis. Just going to go and look at the Marcia track and pull out the police stations. If I do it the right way, it will do it. Sorry about that. I'll redo that. Okay, so now we've got our picture of the number of the police stations. Let's do the same kind of thing for the hospitals. While we're doing that, we could also look at pulling in a table of that data as well. So now we've got our table of police stations we've just created. So it's effectively a dynamic. It's not creating new data along the way. So this is sort of, you think back to how things used to be. You'd be creating this data, and you're not doing it in memory necessarily, but you're creating new information on the fly. Well, right now we're actually creating a model. There's a lot of stuff going on here because I've already done a bunch of things, but essentially you've got a bunch of data along here and you're doing some analysis and you're creating some visualization. This particular model can now be provided to another agency or another group or run in a different scenario to make it look like your different scenarios. Come back in here, we can go a little further and we can start to say, okay, well these are the SES calls as well. And we can start to look at which SES calls were inside of that cyclone track. Same kind of thing. But we also might want to aggregate the SES calls versus the LGA boundaries. So we can take the SES calls and drag them in here and say the other way. We'll aggregate the SES calls. And if I had a bit more time, I'd have some other statistics for those SES calls and be able to pull in those statistics in there as well. So right now we've gone and said, okay, well these are the SES calls. It's now starting to aggregate the count of calls, and of course if I had some statistics in those calls, I'd be able to pull that in as well. You can start to get a feel for that. I'd be interested, I'm going to, if you might want me to do something here, so there might be other things that you guys are thinking about that you want to see done. Probably got a little bit of time, we could try that. Or otherwise, I'd be interested to know if the people that are in the audience here that are actually doing analytics like this, or some of their teams, they might be doing analytics. I'd be keen to hear from you guys to hear the types of things that you are actually doing. Is anybody using insights in this way or in any way? The answer is no. Can anyone foresee a way that they might use a product like this? or are they using other products that do the similar types of things? Yes. Yeah. It's all right. I don't know. I'm pretty much done here. I mean, if you guys have got questions, then maybe fire
Any
away.
other questions for Nick? All right, let's thank Andrew and Ryan again for the presentation. We'll come back tomorrow. So, thanks Andrew, good stuff.
Getting like 25 different phone calls. But yes, sorry.